Yo, what did y'all think of Chris Eubank Jr. versus Conor Benn Deuce? What did y'all think? Didn't live up to the hype of the first one. It's kind of hard to top the first one. That's what I always said. That was, when Chris Eubank Sr. came in to the building. I mean, can you put that in a bottle and recapture it? Nah, you just can't. And both fighters wanted to go into this fight and be more technical, so it wasn't going to be such a crowd pleasing fight. But it's like they were fighting at two different speeds, man. You'd be hard pressed to give Chris Eubank any of those rounds. He had his moments, but it's like his legs were gone. Like he fell numerous times. I think there was only one time where Conor Benn actually hit the canvas from kind of like a stumble or a push. So, it almost looked like Conor Benn was the bigger guy. I know Terrence Crawford was in attendance, of course, because Bo Mack is working with Chris Eubank Jr. I saw Terrence Crawford in the locker room before the fight with Conor Benn, and he said, "You looking swole," So, he was looking big and fast. Conor Benn is really, really, really fast and strong. He popped Chris Eubank's head so far back in two of those rounds, man. Chris Eubank has a pretty good chin, but he hit the canvas twice in that last round. But let's take it back to even the press conference. It was epic. The last one, you had the stare down between juniors and seniors. That was a classic moment to see that. Real classic moment to see that, man. 50 Cent comes out with Chris Eubank Jr. in this one. And pretty sure the dad didn't like some of the language. I saw him look over at 50 a couple of times, but I guess he knew what was coming. But 50 Cent walked Chris Eubank Jr. to the ring. Chris Eubank Jr. always looks hard. And shut up, motorcycle. I'm doing a video. And, I watched the post-fight press conference, and some reporter asked Conor Benn what he thought of looking out there and seeing 50 Cent, and he said, "What's 50 Cent gonna do?" That's what I'm thinking. It was an interesting question. I didn't expect it, but it's like, well, he's focused on the fight. He ain't thinking about 50 Cent. Oh, should I run up and get an autograph real quick? But I had to take notes because there were so many observations. I normally just go off the top, but let's see. I noticed Conor was throwing Chris Eubank around like he was the bigger man. He's throwing him around. Like, he even smiled after he threw Chris Eubank in the corner near the end of the fight. So that was interesting to see. Of course, the two knockdowns came in round 12. It was a unanimous decision, of course, for Conor Benn. Like I said, you'd be hard-pressed to find any rounds that Chris Eubank Jr. won. I noticed an observation. When fighters are about to have children or just have a child, I know Conor Benn has children, but he's already, used to being a dad. Chris Eubank Jr. is expecting twins. That seems to take some steam out of a fighter, I've noticed. I don't know if they don't want to leave it all in the ring because they want to be there for their kids so they don't go as hard, in the ring. They don't go all out. I remember back in the day with the UFC, one of my favorite fighters, Junior Dos Santos, I forget who he was fighting, but he just had a baby, was about to, and he got stopped. I was like, wow. Your mind's probably doing a million things while you're in the ring instead of being focused on the task at hand. So I don't know about that. I know Lennox Lewis didn't have his family until after his career. He didn't want any distractions. And that was probably smart. Children are the best thing on earth. So, you go in the ring and your mind's probably on them like, wonder how this is going to end up and this and that. And your mind's racing. And yeah, that's one of my observations. Bomac, I don't know what the game plan was for this fight. I know he was talking about he wants Chris Eubank Jr. to fight Canelo, and since they both lost, why not? Why not? But I don't know if Chris Eubank Jr. left too much in the ring in the first fight. I know Teddy Atlas has said that fighters leave something in the ring with each fight. Each fight they leave something there. And I guess he thinks you don't get it back. I guess it depends on the person, though. But I don't know what the game plan was for Bomac, and whatever it wasn't implemented. I don't know if Chris Eubank Jr. is changing trainers too much. Roy Jones, Bomac, I think there was someone else. He and Anthony Joshua seem to not mesh well with changing trainers a lot. So it's another observation. Let's see. Oh, of course, Conor Benn ends the losing streak. The Benns had never beat officially the Eubanks, even though Chris Eubank Sr. said in the documentary that he believes that Nigel won that draw that they had. Chris Eubank Sr. won 2 of the fights, and then the third one was a draw. They fought 3 times. I don't know if there'll be 3 fights with the juniors, though, because it seems rough for Chris Eubank Jr. to make the weight. They would have to fight at a different weight, and Conor Benn wants to get the WBC title and move down to 154. So there might not be a trilogy, and that's fine. I've kind of seen enough with it. Let's see. Oh, I know Eddie Hearn is happy, because Eddie Hearn and you've seen Chris Eubank Jr. go back and forth. At one of the press conferences, I think it was the last one, you see Eddie Hearn holding up the cue cards, because Chris Eubank Jr. didn't want him to talk, so he's just holding up what he wanted to say on the cards. Pretty creative. And Chris Eubank was almost at a loss for words, I noticed, but he still got in his digs at Eddie Hearn, He cannot stand Eddie Hearn. Let's see, what else? Yeah, this fight kind of made me think of the Katie Taylor-Amanda Serrano fight, the third one. Was it the third or second? I think it was whatever the last one was. It was lackluster. I think when fighters, and I may have said this, I know I've said it in other videos, when they go through a grueling fight, sometimes they think about that and they get in the ring and it drains their energy because they're like, do I really want to go through that again? So they kind of sit there posing and wasting time. And you notice Chris Eubank Jr. kept looking up at the Jumbotron, I guess seeing where they were in the fight. So he probably just wasn't feeling it that night and wasn't in the mood to really, mix it up. Because, who wants to go 12 rounds and get beat around like that? He said he was going to knock out Conor Benn, so I take that as I'm not trying to go the distance again, Let's see. Did I mention everything? I'll be talking more and more about this as things continue. I haven't heard Chris Eubank's post-fight presser, as they say in the UK. I would really like to hear what he's got to say. I saw him walking out of the building. He looked dejected. He was in great shape. He looked a little beefier than he did in the first fight, but he's got what appears to be real thin legs, and they seem to betray him in this fight. You gotta do leg day. Leg day's not glamorous. People don't really walk around with high shorts on, so people think they can skip on leg day. But I don't know. Maybe his legs are strong, but they didn't look strong tonight. You should fight at your best weight. And this was Conor Benn's night. He looked fast. He looked strong, super quick, and he was fighting a lot like Usyk. He'd do a lot of feints, and Chris Eubank Jr. was biting on a lot of those feints. He's like, he was biting on a lot of them. But what'd you guys think of the fight? You feel you got your money's worth? $60 on DAZN. Remember DAZN talking about when they came out, no high pay-per-views or no pay-per-views at all? Now, not only do we have pay-per-views, we got high pay-per-views like before, $60. A lot of people said it didn't live up to it because it was more technical, but like I said, it's kind of hard to top the first fight. That was like an epic classic, instant classic. Anyway, the Cash App, $JRoos33. The Instagram, the J Roos Theory, channel number 2, and WJ. LSR forever. And please be fearless. Yay.